The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Federation buzzed with an energy that could only be described as anxiously bureaucratic, if such a thing existed, in any of the 17,000 recognized languages across known space. High Council member Withrix's tentacles twitched in what his species considered barely contained exasperation as he reviewed the latest report hovering before him. So he clicked, mandibles clacking in their equivalent of a sigh. "You're telling me these humans managed to achieve faster-than-light travel using technology that, by all reasonable measures, should have turned their solar system into a rather spectacular light show." The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed a rotating image of Earth, along with various data streams that made absolutely no sense to anyone with more than 2 brain stems, which, coincidentally, was most of the council. Commander Zex Troll, who had drawn the astronomically short straw of presenting this report, straightened all 4 of his spinal ridges, a sure sign of diplomatic discomfort. "Yes, Your Eminence. They appear to have. How do I phrase this delicately? Completely ignored several fundamental laws of physics through what they call aggressive engineering optimization. A ripple of what might have been laughter or possibly indigestion passed through the assembled council members. The proxons, being gaseous entities, simply bubbled more vigorously. Aggressive engineering optimization, Withrix repeated, his crystalline eyes refracting light in what could only be described as derision. They strapped fusion reactors to their ships and hoped for the best, didn't they? Actually, Your Eminence, they called it adding more boosters until it worked. The chamber fell silent. Even the proxons stopped bubbling. Nevertheless, Zex Troll continued, trying to maintain some semblance of professional dignity. Initial observations suggest they are merely primitive bipeds. Their military capabilities appear to be limited to projectile weapons and crude explosive devices. Nothing that would pose any significant threat to Federation interests. My council member Withrix's central eye narrowed. "And you base this assessment on, well..." Zex Troll pulled up another holographic display, this one showing various human military vehicles. They still use combustion engines for their ground vehicles. Their aircraft rely on atmospheric lift, rather than gravity manipulation. And their primary weapon systems are essentially refined versions of throwing very small rocks very fast. Fascinating, Withrix mused, his tentacles curling in thought. And yet they survived their atomic age without extinction. Curious. Pure luck, surely another council member chittered from the shadows. "Have you seen their entertainment broadcasts? Half of them involve explosions for no apparent reason." Which is precisely why Withrix announced, his voice carrying that particular tone that meant someone's career was about to take an interesting turn. "Commander Zex Troll will be leading our military observation mission to Earth." Zex Troll's spinal ridges drooped noticeably. "Your Eminence, I must protest. Surely a more qualified." "You seem quite confident in your assessment of their capabilities, Commander. Or perhaps you'd like to revise your report." The chamber filled with the subtle sounds of various species trying not to appear amused. The proxons weren't even trying to hide their bubbling laughter. "No, Your Eminence," Zex Troll replied, accepting his fate with all the grace of someone who just realized they'd played themselves. "I stand by my assessment. The humans are primitive, barely coordinated bipeds who pose no significant threat to galactic civilization. I would be honored to lead the observation mission." "Excellent." Withrix's tentacles waved in what might have been enthusiasm or barely concealed sadistic glee. "You'll depart immediately. Do try to avoid any diplomatic incidents. We wouldn't want to frighten these primitive bipeds with our superior technology and civilization." As Zex Troll left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was laughing at him. He just didn't know the joke yet. Little did he know he was about to become very, very familiar with the human phrase famous last words. Commander Zex Troll had expected his first diplomatic meeting with the humans to be boring. Mind-numbingly, protocol-followingly, bureaucratically boring. He'd even brought his data pad loaded with the latest Centaurian opera recordings to help pass the time. What he hadn't expected was to be crouched behind an overturned conference table while plasma bolts sizzled overhead and Lieutenant Kane Matthews laughed. Actually laughed. "You know," Matthews said, checking the magazine of his antiquated projectile weapon with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm, "when they said this diplomatic mission would be a blast, I didn't think they meant it literally." Zex Troll's translator must have malfunctioned. No sane species would make jokes during an active combat situation. "Lieutenant, this is hardly the time for..." Incoming Dr. Astra Novak's voice cut through the chaos as she actually slid, like some kind of primitive sport across the polished floor, a stolen pirate weapon in each hand. They're trying to flank us through the ventilation system. Classic Matthews grinned, and Zex Troll felt his third heart skip a beat at the predatory expression. Hey Doc, remember that thing we did on Titan? The thing with the coffee maker, Novak asked, returning fire with remarkable accuracy for someone who was supposedly just a scientist. Exactamundo. Zex Troll watched in horror as the two humans shared a look that, in any civilized species, would indicate severe mental deterioration. Instead of following proper emergency protocols or waiting for Federation security forces, they began improvising. Matthews pulled out what appeared to be a small packet of preserved food and a personal cleaning device. Novak was already rewiring the room's environmental controls with one hand while shooting with the other. This is highly irregular, Zex Troll protested as Matthews began mixing chemicals from the conference room's refreshment station. The Federation handbook clearly states that in cases of pirate incursion we should. With all due respect, Commander Matthews interrupted, now somehow converting the room's decorative water feature into some kind of primitive explosive device. Your handbook didn't account for good old-fashioned human ingenuity. The pirates, a motley crew of Orion raiders who had clearly expected an easy target, burst through the main doors. They were met with what Zex Troll could only describe as orchestrated insanity. The makeshift explosive device, something about carbonated beverages and mint-flavored confections that Zex Troll's scientific mind refused to accept, created a chain reaction with the altered environmental systems. The resulting chaos involved foam, static electricity, and what appeared to be weaponized cleaning solution. This is impossible, one of the pirates muttered, his cybernetic eye twitching as he tried to process the scene before him. They're using maintenance supplies as weapons. Welcome to humanity, Matthews shouted, wielding what had previously been a ceremonial Federation banner as an improvised spear, where anything can be a weapon if you're creative enough. Zex Troll watched, his multiple hearts pounding, as the humans moved through the chaos like they'd rehearsed it. They used the pirates' confusion against them, turning their own superior technology into disadvantages. A thrown coffee cup here, a repurposed desk lamp there, and somehow they were winning. Is that human using a potted plant as a shield? One of his junior observers asked, mandibles quivering in disbelief. That's not even the strangest part, another replied, watching as Dr. Novak demonstrated that apparently, in human hands, a stylus could be just as effective as a plasma knife. The battle, if one could call such unorthodox combat methods a battle, lasted exactly 7 minutes and 23 seconds. When Federation security finally arrived, they found the pirates subdued, the humans grinning, and Commander Zex Troll re-evaluating every life choice that had led him to this moment. Mission accomplished, Matthews declared, brushing some kind of foam from his uniform. Though I got to say, these guys weren't nearly as tough as those ice pirates on Europa. You've done this before? Zex Troll managed to ask. Oh sure, humans get into scraps all the time, Novak replied cheerfully, already taking readings from the pirates' weapons with her partially melted scientific equipment. Though usually we have to make do with even less. Having actual furniture to work with was a nice change of pace. As Zex Troll watched the humans casually discuss their combat techniques, apparently something called MacGyvering was a crucial part of their military training. He realized his initial report might have been slightly understated. He opened his personal log and began a new entry: urgent update to Federation Security Council regarding previous assessment of human military capabilities. I may have made a terrible mistake. In the background, Matthews was explaining to a horrified Federation security officer how they'd managed to turn the conference room's coffee machine into an improvised sonic weapon. Zex Troll decided some details were better left off the official report, for everyone's peace of mind. Today's joint training exercise, Commander Zex Troll announced to the assembled Federation observers, will demonstrate standard combat protocols, and he paused, watching Lieutenant Matthews chug what must have been his 5th cup of stimulant beverage. Lieutenant, is that wise before a combat exercise? Coffee, Matthews grinned, crushing the cup. This is nothing. You should see how much we drink before actual combat. Besides, we're just doing a little friendly competition, right? Zex Troll's spinal ridges twitched. After the diplomatic incident, he'd learned that humans and the word friendly had a very different relationship than most species. The course has been designed to test endurance, tactical thinking, and... Last one through buys drinks, Dr. Novak shouted, already sprinting toward the obstacle course. The other human participants whooped and charged after her, leaving the Federation forces standing in confused formation. But I haven't finished the safety briefing Zex-Troll called after them. There are 17 critical protocols to review. Learned by doing. Matthew's voice echoed back. Best way to handle anything. What followed would haunt Zex-Troll's nightmares for cycles to come. The obstacle course, designed by Federation experts to test the limits of various species, apparently qualified as light exercise by human standards. The first challenge, a gravity variable chamber meant to disorient and exhaust participants, seemed to only energize the humans. "This is great," one human soldier called out, literally bouncing off the walls. "It's like that time we had shore leave on Jupiter's moons." Correction, Zex-Troll muttered into his recorder. Humans appear to derive entertainment from conditions that would incapacitate most species. The water obstacle, filled with near-freezing liquid, was meant to test environmental adaptability. The humans dove in without hesitation. "Bit warm, isn't it?" Matthews commented as he emerged, dripping. "Reminds me of summer swimming back home." Their internal temperature should be dropping to dangerous levels, one of the medical observers noted, frantically checking their instruments. "But they're fine." "How are they fine?" "Oh, this is nothing," Novak explained, wringing out her hair. "Humans regularly swim in Arctic waters for fun. We call it polar plunging. Great way to wake up in the morning." The Federation observers exchanged horrified glances, but it was the pain tolerance test that truly broke Zex-Troll's understanding of reality. The course included a section with mild electromagnetic pulses, nothing dangerous, just uncomfortable enough to test determination. "Is something supposed to be happening?" Matthews asked, standing in the middle of the pulse field. "I feel a bit tingly." "Kind of nice, actually. Like one of those massage chairs at the mall." "Impossible," the technical supervisor muttered, checking the settings. "These pulses are calibrated to simulate moderate nerve stimulation. They should be experiencing significant discomfort." "Oh, that explains it," Novak chimed in, jogging in place despite being in what should have been a debilitating field. "Human nerve endings have a much higher threshold. You should see what we consider spicy food." Zex-Troll made another note, urgent addendum: human pain tolerance exceeds all known biological parameters. Recommendation: never, ever get into a war of attrition with them. The final challenge was a simulated combat scenario against training droids. The Federation forces approached it with proper tactical formation and careful strategic planning. The humans did not. "Hey, these robots are pretty cool," one human soldier exclaimed, after literally wrestling a droid to the ground. "Much better than the ones at the arcade." "It did. Did they just form a human pyramid to scale that wall?" an observer asked, mandibles slack with disbelief. "Negative," Zex-Troll replied, watching the chaos unfold. "They formed a human pyramid to launch one of their members over the wall, who then rigged a makeshift pulley system using their belts and that decorative plant support structure. That's not in any tactical manual I've ever read." "I don't think humans read tactical manuals," Zex-Troll sighed. "They just do things." The exercise ended with the humans not only completing the course in record time, but somehow managing to improve its efficiency. They discovered 3 shortcuts that Federation designers hadn't even considered possible, rewired 2 security systems because they were fun to hack, and turned the final obstacle into what they called a slip-end slide. "Well, that was a good warm-up," Matthews declared, barely breathing hard. "When does the actual training start?" Zex-Troll stared at his datapad, where the humans' biometric readings defied every known law of physiology. Their endurance hadn't dropped. If anything, they seemed more energized than when they started. "Lieutenant," he asked carefully, "what exactly do humans consider a challenging exercise?" "Oh, you know, the usual stuff," Matthews shrugged. "Ultramarathons, wingsuit flying, free climbing mountains, the kind of things you do when you're bored on a weekend. They do these things for entertainment." "Sure, nothing better than a little adrenaline rush to make you feel alive. Speaking of which, anyone up for round 2? We could make it interesting this time, maybe add some obstacles." The Federation observers took an instinctive step back. Even the combat droids seemed to edge away. Zex-Troll opened a new section in his report, titled Human Recreational Activities, a comprehensive list of terrifying hobbies. Then he watched as the humans began discussing ways to improve the course by adding what they called parkour elements and American Ninja Warrior stuff. "Commander," one of his junior officers whispered, "should we be concerned that they consider our most advanced training facility to be recreational?" "No," Zex-Troll replied, watching Matthews demonstrate how to use momentum and gravity in ways that shouldn't be possible. We should be terrified. In the background, Dr. Novak was explaining to a horrified medical team how humans sometimes broke bones for fun while participating in something called extreme sports. Zex Troll made one final note addendum to previous reports: forget the weapons, forget the technology. The truly terrifying thing about humans is that they genuinely enjoy doing things that would kill most species, and they do them for fun. The warning sirens at Outpost Delta began wailing at exactly 0300 hours, station time. Commander Zex Troll was reviewing his increasingly concerning reports about human capabilities when the first explosion rocked the station. Kraxon Raiders, the station AI announced. Multiple breach points detected. All personnel to emergency stations. Kraxons. Cybernetically enhanced warriors known for their brutality and efficiency. Even Federation elite units hesitated to engage them directly. Zex Troll's heart sank as he realized the station's main security force was away on training exercises. What they had instead was a small contingent of human peacekeepers who had been visiting for cultural exchange. Finally, some action. Lieutenant Matthews' voice crackled over the comm. "Hey, Commander, ever play Capture the Flag? This is not a game, Lieutenant. The Kraxons are perfect for testing that theory about electromagnetic pulse effects on cyborg components." Dr. Novak cut in. "Also, dibs on the big one with the plasma cannon." Zex Troll watched in horror as his security feeds showed the humans preparing, if you could call it that. They were combining pieces of station equipment in ways that violated several laws of physics and probably a few of engineering. "Is that human wearing the maintenance droid's arms as power armor?" one of his officers asked. "Technically, it's an exo-assist utility frame," Matthews replied over the comm. "But yeah, pretty cool, right? Hey Doc, remember that thing we did with the mining laser on Europa? Already on it. Just need to reverse the polarity and..." "That's not how physics works," Zex Troll protested. "Tell that to the laws of physics," Novak shouted back cheerfully. "They're more like guidelines anyway." The Kraxons breached the main corridor, expecting terrified station personnel. Instead, they found humans. Laughing humans. Humans who had somehow turned the station's cleaning robots into mobile shield generators and were treating the whole invasion like an elaborate game. 10 points for headshots, one human soldier called out. "You're on," another replied. "Loser buys drinks at Murphy's when we get back. Please maintain proper combat protocol." Zex Troll tried to interject, but was interrupted by the sight of a human literally surfing down a corridor on a piece of broken hull plating, dual-wielding improvised weapons, and singing something about riding into danger zone. The Kraxons, programmed for conventional warfare, seemed absolutely baffled by human combat tactics. Their cyber-enhanced brains apparently couldn't compute why their opponents were treating lethal combat like a party game. "Did that human just throw a vending machine at the enemy?" a Federation officer asked, watching the security feeds in disbelief. "Negative," Zex Troll replied, his voice hollow. "They converted the vending machine into a makeshift railgun using parts from the station's magnetic delivery system. That's not possible. I've stopped using that word around humans," Zex Troll admitted. "It only encourages them." The tide of battle turned dramatically when a Kraxon made the fatal mistake of injuring one of the junior human scientists. The response was immediate and terrifying. "Oh, you did not just hurt our intern." Matthews' voice had lost all its humor, replaced by something that made even Zex Troll's combat-hardened troops step back. "Nobody touches our coffee-fetching baby scientist." What followed was a display of human-pack bonding that would be studied in Federation military academies for generations to come. The humans moved as one, their previous playful attitude replaced by focused fury. Yet somehow, they still kept score. "That's 15 for me," Novak shouted, using what appeared to be a jury-rigged medical scanner as a weapon. "Also, someone grab Joey before he bleeds," on his thesis notes. 20 points, Matthews called back. "And already got him to medical. Nobody messes with our science squad." The Kraxons, faced with opponents who treated serious injuries as minor inconveniences and responded to threats with a combination of deadly efficiency and inappropriate humor, began to retreat. "Oh no, you don't." A human engineer had somehow reprogrammed the station's garbage disposal system into what they called a surprise delivery system. "Running away? That's -5 points," another human added, wielding what Zex Troll was fairly certain used to be a coffee maker. When it was over, The humans gathered in the medical bay, comparing scores and tending to their wounded while treating serious combat injuries as mere inconveniences. Just a flesh-wound, the injured intern insisted, trying to work on his research while being treated. Did anyone record the data from when they hit me? The energy discharge readings could be useful for my paper. Zex Troll added to his report, humans appear to value their social bonds above personal safety, treating attacks on group members as personal affronts. Additionally, they show disturbing ability to weaponize any technology, regardless of its original purpose. Most concerning. They maintain morale by turning lethal combat into competitive social activities. Hey, Commander Matthews called out, sporting what would definitely leave interesting scars. We're having a post-battle pizza party in the mess hall. Want to join? We're going to compare notes on how to improve station defenses. I've got some ideas involving the recycling system and those spare quantum stabilizers. Zex Troll looked at the devastation around him, then at the cheerful humans already planning improvements to their improvised weapons, and made one final note. Warning to all Federation forces, human protective instincts transform them from dangerous to lethal. Their response to threats against group members can only be described as enthusiastically apocalyptic. In the background, someone suggested installing rocket launchers, but like the fun kind on the cleaning droids. Zex Troll decided he didn't want to know what humans considered the fun kind of rocket launchers. And this, Dr. Novak announced with entirely too much enthusiasm for someone discussing biological warfare capabilities, is what happens to human biological functions during what we call an adrenaline rush. The Federation Scientific Committee watched in horror as the holographic display showed the cascade of chemical reactions that turn normal humans into what could only be described as organic war machines. Fascinating, Chief Researcher Vix Tal muttered, all six eyes widening. Your bodies deliberately override their own safety protocols. Oh yeah, Novak grinned, pulling up more data. See, when humans get excited, scared, or just really into whatever they're doing, our bodies release this cocktail of chemicals. Adrenaline, cortisol, endorphins, we call it our fight or flight response. Though honestly, it's more like fight or fight harder for most of us. But the strain on your cardiovascular system alone should kill us, Novak laughed. That's the best part. We've evolved to not just survive this state, but to actually enjoy it. Some humans deliberately seek out activities that trigger this response. We call them adrenaline junkies. Commander Zex Troll, who had been required to attend after his increasingly alarming reports, felt his primary stomach lurch. You mean to tell me that humans intentionally pursue activities that activate their combat chemistry? 4. Entertainment. Exactly. Skydiving, bungee jumping, extreme sports, anything that gets the heart racing. Some humans even drink concentrated caffeine to simulate the effects. Speaking of which, she pulled out her ever-present coffee cup. Please don't, Zex Troll whispered. But it was too late. Now let's talk about human healing factors. You see this compound here? She pointed to another section of the display. This is why humans can keep fighting even after sustaining what most species would consider critical injuries. The medical experts in the room began making distressed chittering sounds. Your pain response doesn't shut down your motor functions, one asked. Better, Novak beamed. Pain often makes humans more determined. We call it getting angry. It's like a backup power system, but instead of reducing function, it makes us try harder. That's not how biology is supposed to work, Chief Researcher Vix Tal protested. I'll wait until you hear about our healing process. Novak pulled up images that made several Federation scientists excuse themselves from the room. See, most species try to prevent damage. Humans? We just get better at repairing it. Break a bone. It grows back stronger. Tear a muscle. It rebuilds tougher. We literally get stronger from being damaged. Zex Troll made another note in his increasingly panicked report. Human biology appears to operate on spite and determination rather than conventional biological principles. And here's the really fun part, Novak continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing horror around her. Remember those combat chemicals I mentioned? They can temporarily override almost any physical limitation. There are documented cases of humans lifting vehicles, running on broken legs, or staying conscious despite injuries that should render them completely incapacitated. But why? Someone whispered from the back of the room. Evolution is metal like that, Novak shrugged. We evolved as persistence predators. Instead of being the strongest or fastest, we just decided to be the species that doesn't stop. Ever. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Now, about our digestive system's ability to process nearly any organic matter. I think Zex Troll interrupted quickly. Seeing several scientists turning concerning colors, that's enough for one session. But I haven't even gotten to our regenerative capabilities. Did you know humans can regrow parts of their liver, or that our body constantly replaces all our cells over time? We're basically organic nanite swarms. The Federation's leading xenobiologist dropped their datapad. You replace all your cells. Yep, we're literally not the same person we were 7 years ago. Physically speaking, anyway. Oh, and wait until you hear about how humans in peak physical condition can. That's quite enough, Chief Researcher Vix Tal announced, mandibles quivering. I believe we need time to process this information. Process, Novak looked disappointed. But I haven't even explained how human children heal even faster, or how our immune system gets stronger by being exposed to threats, or this really cool thing our bodies do in extreme cold where we. Meeting adjourned, Zex Troll declared, watching several more scientists edge toward the exits. As the Federation scientists fled, Air strategically withdrew from the laboratory. Zex Troll added one final note to his report: most concerning discovery, humans not only survive conditions that would kill other species, but they actively seek them out, adapt to them, and become stronger from the experience. Recommendation: never, under any circumstances, attempt to engage in biological warfare with humans. They will probably enjoy it. In the background, Dr. Novak could be heard explaining to a terrified junior researcher how humans sometimes deliberately infected themselves with weakened pathogens just to teach our immune systems how to fight better. The researcher fainted. Novak checked their vitals while cheerfully explaining how human medical knowledge came from a lot of trial and error, emphasis on the error part. Commander Zex Troll stood before the High Council, his spinal ridges quivering with what his medical evaluation would later call acute human-induced stress response. Esteemed council members, he began, trying to keep his voice steady, I come before you to deliver my final assessment of humanity's military capabilities. I need to revise my initial report. Significantly, my council member Yith Rix's tentacles curled with amusement. Oh, no more primitive bipeds, Commander. With all due respect, Your Eminence, Zex Troll replied, I was catastrophically wrong. Humans aren't primitive. They're Yes, they're impossible. The words burst out like a pressure valve releasing. Just last week, they integrated their first engineering team into our shipyards. Within 3 days, they had improved our quantum drive efficiency by doing something they called percussive maintenance, which is apparently their technical term for hitting things until they work better. The council chambers filled with confused murmuring. And that's not even the worst part, Zex Troll continued, his professional composure crumbling. They've started teaching our troops their combat techniques. Do you know what happened during yesterday's joint training session? A human instructor taught our elite guards how to use cleaning supplies as tactical equipment. They're calling it Home Alone Protocol, apparently based on some ancient human training video. Surely it can't be that, Yith Rix began. 3 days ago, Zex Troll interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. I watched a human maintenance worker repair a fusion reactor by following what they called their technical manual. It was a collection of, and I quote, spicy memes and pro-gamer moves. It worked better than before. He took a moment to compose himself, all 4 hearts racing. But here's the truly terrifying part. Everything I've mentioned, the combat prowess, the biological resilience, the technical innovations, those are just their baseline capabilities. The real reason humans are the most terrifying species we've encountered is this: they never stop improving. Zex Troll pulled up his final data analysis, showing human advancement rates compared to other species. Most species develop until they reach a comfortable survival level. Humans? They get bored with success. They deliberately seek out new challenges. They look at their limitations as temporary inconveniences. And worst of all, they share everything they learn. Share, one council member asked, alarmed. They have this concept called open source, Zex Troll explained, his voice haunted. They give away their knowledge for free, to everyone, because they think it's fun to see what others will do with it. The council chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Therefore, Zex Troll concluded, I recommend immediately classifying humans as a protected warrior species, not to protect them from other species, but to protect other species from having to compete with them. Also, we should probably establish some guidelines about letting them improve our technology. Yesterday, they suggested upgrading our planetary defense systems with something they called RGB lighting because, and I quote, it would look totally rad. Council member Yith Rix's crystalline eyes flickered in thought. And your final assessment of humanity's threat level? Humans aren't a threat, Your Eminence. They're a force of nature. They turned our most advanced training course into an obstacle playground. They treat lethal combat like a social activity. They deliberately expose themselves to danger to see what happens, and they do it all while making jokes. Your recommendation? Full alliance, immediate integration, and maybe some safety guidelines about letting them redesign our equipment. Also, we should probably establish a committee to review their improvements before implementation. Last week, they tried to convince our engineering department that painting racing stripes on starships would make them go faster. The council was silent for a long moment. Very well, Wythrixx announced. The Federation hereby recognizes humanity as a protected warrior species. May whatever gods they believe in help us all. Oh, Zextroll added, checking his data pad. That reminds me. They've already started a cultural exchange program. Apparently they're teaching our troops something called space shanties for improving morale during long voyages. In the distance, the faint sound of humans teaching alien crews to sing "What Do We Do with a Drunken Spacer" echoed through the station's corridors. Zextroll's final report contained just one line: humanity's greatest weapon isn't their strength, their technology, or even their adaptability. It's their ability to make everyone else as crazy as they are and somehow make us enjoy it.